on January 20th at an event in Washington, D.C. And so if any of you would like to attend and haven't been invited, please give me your card, or it will also be webcast live at the Foundation's website, which is www.kff.org, starting at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And finally, I just wanted to close. Alan Kay, I've been thinking a lot about Neil Postman lately. And when you mentioned
my
him,
best friend.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry for your loss. I've gone back and reread Amusing Ourselves to Death, and then went back and reread Huxley based on that. And I happen to have here a paragraph from the foreword to his Amusing Ourselves to Death, and I just wanted to close by reading that. Contrary to common belief among the educated, Huxley and Orwell did not prophesize the same thing. Orwell warns that we will be overcome by an externally imposed oppression. But in Huxley's vision, no big brother is required to deprive people of their autonomy, maturity, and history. As he saw it, people will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think. What Orwell feared were those who would ban books. What Huxley feared was that there would be no reason to ban a book, for there would be no one left who wanted to read one. Orwell feared those who would deprive us of information. Huxley feared those who would give us so much that we would be reduced to passivity and egoism. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared that the truth would drown in a sea of irrelevance. In short, Orwell feared that what we hate will ruin us. Huxley feared that what we love will ruin us. So that's just the cautionary tale that I bring to all of you in hopes that you will be truly inspired to make products not just for kids at play, but for kids to learn and grow with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicky. The last presentation is by Mitch Resnick, who is professor of learning research at the MIT Media Lab, and whose work was the basis for Lego Mindstorms and a variety of other extraordinary products and services. So, Mitch, take it away.
Thanks. Well, as you know, Warren had encouraged us to think about the year 2040. So I did a little time travel to the year 2040 and come back with this report. And one of the big news stories from the year in 2040, not too surprisingly, was the presidential election. The presidential election year where we elected our 50th president. And in fact, it's relevant to this gathering because it turns out that the presidential election for 2040, education and children were a main topic of discussion. And many of the analysts felt that the debate and discussion around children and technology, children and education helped determine the winner of the election, the person who became 50th president of the United States, Sasha Obama, pictured here 30 years ago when her father was serving as president. And in fact, during the campaign, Sasha Obama often referred back to some of the initiatives in her father's administration. As you might remember, 30 years ago, her father had come to office saying there were three major domestic policy areas to focus on in healthcare, energy, and education. And as Sasha Obama said in the campaign trail, looking back 30 years, there was incredible progress on the first two. The universal health care was now accepted, and people saw it was crazy to have ever done without it. There have been incredible advances in the technology for sustainable energy, and through cap and trade policies and others, there have been important steps taken on the issues of global warming. Yet there was very little progress in the area of education. And this is an area that felt that it was really important to sort of finish this unfinished agenda. It's not because there was lack of technology. Clearly there was abundant technology of all different forms in 2040 that were entering in children's lives. And the gap in terms of access to technology had certainly disappeared by 2040. And 99% of all children had access to technology anywhere, anytime. There was computation and communications in desktops, clothing, walls, wherever you turn. There was easy access to computing, to communications, to all different sorts of media. And yet, despite this easy access, almost all of the time the kids were spending their time browsing, chatting, and gaming. Very little of their time designing, creating, and authoring. Is connecting up with what Vicky was also saying, and I would join her in saying that, even though there might might see that there was, some movement towards a greater level of participation and possibilities for authoring that started out with Web 2.0 and then followed up by Web 3.0, 4.0, and Web 8.0 in 2040, and yet there really wasn't such a significant difference of what it really, of a serious type of participation with media, of a true ability to design, create, and author. As Sasha Obama said on the campaign trail, it's as if children learn to read but not write. So the children were interacting with technology all of the time, but very few were able to actually express themselves with that technology. And again, it was one of the unfulfilled parts of the agenda of her father, where, again, as he said to the National Academy of Sciences in the same speech that Alan referred to earlier, but a different part, where Barack Obama said, encourage young people to create, build, and invent, to be makers of things, not just consumers of things. Mm-hmm. And yet that never really did come about, even during those next 30 years. So that Sasha Obama made that a centerpiece for her campaign and wanted to sort of close not just an access gap, but saying what really needed to be closed was closing what might be called the literacy gap, of a true literacy, of not just being able to use the media around you, but to be able to express yourself. And that in turn would help close the creativity gap. And again, as she sometimes said on the campaign trail, at the root of creativity is create. And we need to engage people and be able to create, design, express themselves. In looking at examples of this, one thing that she would point to was that technology had actually first come out and had risen to some visibility during her father's administration. A piece of software called Scratch that was developed at MIT Media Lab based on work done by Alan Kay and his group. And this is sort of some of the early attempts of trying to make it easier for everyone to be able to design, create, express themselves with new media. So it's shown again in this early form from back in 2010 of being able to express procedural ideas by putting blocks together like Lego bricks to be able to build and control your own interactive stories, games, animations, simulations as Alan was talking about earlier, and then be able to share your creations online where others could be not just try them out, but take pieces of them, use them as raw materials for building their own, so that you could start working together. And although it's true that by 2010 there's more than 1 million of the Scratch projects been shared online, it was still a thin slice of the population that really got engaged with these activities. But you can see the potential from some of that early work. This is the page from one of the active users of the website, My Red Neptune, who created literally hundreds of these different projects and shared them, and a great variety of different types of projects. At holiday time, she didn't just go and buy cards for her friends. She created her own interactive cards to send to her friends. So this was not something she just took from someone else's website, but she wrote the code for creating this type of project. In addition to just creating her own cards and stories, she started making her own individual characters because she found that other people liked to use her characters. So she put up projects with many different characters and then wrote notes and said, please feel free to use these. And then she offered her services and said, if you want a character, I'll design it for you, I'll program it for you. So she was offering her services as a consultant online to others. So it's a type of open source community where people were, again, sharing code with one another. And sure enough, when someone wanted to have a cheetah, she found a video of a cheetah, made her own animation that others would then use. When some other people said, how do you make those animations? She went online and made her own tutorials to help other people learn how she was able to create these different types of animated characters. She then worked with a variety of others to use some of these characters to make different types of games online. This is a game made by 5 kids in 3 different continents who worked together to make these games shared with one another. Started an online company called Crank Inc., where they learned about working with one another in order to be able to create these types of animated stories and games. Other people, friends of hers, got started, although My Red Neptune was doing most of this outside of a school setting. Others were using the software. In this